We are descendants of the Aryan people. The Kurds are very secular people. Islam was forced through the time of Omar by force. So Kurds fought a long time against Islam because they tried to keep their ancient religion. Our failure was open the gates for the Turks.
But the worst is definitely Turkey.
Oh yes. That was the Turkish kind of oppression.
I think that kind of thing happened in Nazi Germany, right?
Yes. It's not allowed that you speak your language. You are not allowed to use your names.
Your names also?
Yes. For example, write your child's name with W is forbidden in Turkey because this letter doesn't exist in Turkish. No, Erdogan said, even if there would be Kurd in Africa, I will go and fight them. No, really.
This is the crazy level of hate they have for Kurds.
Yes.
Recently, we had a clash with Pakistan. Turkey actually supported Pakistan.
Then it's the right time for India to support the Kurds. Islam is then a kind of tool. So when people say, I'm Islam, what do you think about Islam? I would say, I don't know which Islam you mean. The Turkish version of Islam, the Saudi Arabian version of Islam, the Iranian version of Islam. Which Islam do you mean? Keep your Islam for yourself. But what we ask is not for Islam. We want to survive as Kurds. We are Kurdish. We sacrificed 12,000 men and women in the fight against IS. Kurdish women actually never ask for equality because they say we are not copying the Western feminism. And then they use napalm bombs to silence the Kurds.
Really?
Yes.
At that time?
Yes. Some journalists interviewed Churchill. Why did you do that? And then he said, well, these are barbaric tribes. I think we are the last hope for the region with the Kurds.
Namaste, ma'am.
Thank you. Namaste.
Ma'am, geopolitically speaking, Middle East has to be one of the most complex regions on this earth. And in Middle East, in my opinion, the issue of Kurdistan is the most fascinating of all. In every war in Middle East, somehow the role of Kurdish people become consequential. And this is happening in the current Iran war also. People are again talking about, the need for creation of an independent Kurdistan. So I have always been fascinated with this issue, and I always wanted to get an expert who can explain to Indian audience the various complexities of this region, of the Kurdistan issue. Some people might know the ancient historical linkages between people of India and people of Kurdistan. But it's very interesting that there are modern historical linkages also, and they have a lot to do with the British and their divide and rule policy. Everybody who is listening to this knows the role of British in dividing India and Pakistan on religious lines, and the role played by, Radcliffe in drawing up the borders, who never visited India, and he drew up the borders. He was given the responsibility to do it. And the way he did it, it led to massive humanitarian crisis, refugee problem in the millions, and lakhs of people died. Similarly, we have the British dividing up Middle East and creating countries on whim. And this is how the people of Kurdistan, who were supposed to be living in one nation state, are now spread across 4 to 5 nation states, from Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Syria. Another interesting modern history trivia that India and Kurdistan share is the role played by Lord Curzon. As Viceroy of India, he divided Bengal into East and West Bengal, and actually paved the way for the partition of the country, of that part of the country. And also the way he was instrumental in denying autonomy to Kurdish people in 1920s. So yeah, that's another tidbit of interesting information. But ma'am, can you give an overview of this Kurdistan issue, the root cause of this problem, and the various issues that are that Kurdish people are facing today? What is their historical genesis? So let's start with that, and then we can move to other issues.
Well, it's a very complicated issue, the Kurdish issue, but I will try to make it simple. But first of all, I'm pleased to be here. So thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure having the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Kurds, because one of the dilemmas is that all are speaking about us, and some, particularly the leading states who are colonizing Kurdistan, like Turkey, Iran, Syria, and sometimes also Iraq, they're telling the world from their perspective about the Kurds. So, and it includes many of the misinformation, manipulation, etc. That's why it's always important for us to speak on our behalf as Kurds.
True.
So that's why. And back to your question, I would start with the issue with the collapse of Ottoman Empire, because the dilemma, the problem, the tragedy starts actually when British and France came to Middle East in the last period of the Ottoman Empire, when they've seen the system is going to collapse, because Ottomans had spread their power until Asia, Africa, and also Europe. So in the final stage of the empire, British and France have seen that there's opportunity to hastening the collapsing process of the Ottomans. Until that time, most of the ethnic groups in the Ottoman Empire time have been quite autonomous. So Kurds in this time have been somehow autonomous. They had their tribes. Kurds mostly are organized and have been organized in tribal structures, and in some kingdoms. I would say the same was with the Christians and also other ethnic groups of the Ottoman Empire. And the problem was when British and French have been creating the strategy how to fastening the process. In these, they have been using the classic version of colonial powers, divide and rule, using the ethnic groups against each other, and then also in the ethnic groups using the diversity of the communities against each other, and then also provocating them against the Ottoman Empire. That was the process of the fastening of the collapse of the empire. And domestically, what the empire did, the Ottomans, was putting much more pressure on the ethnic groups, let's say increasing the taxes, asking non-Muslim communities to give their sons to the Ottoman Empire army. So that's created also problems between Ottomans and ethnic groups inside. So in the last period then, when the First World War started, Ottomans went to war, and then new Turkish nationalism came up, Turkish nationalism, which was affected by the European nationalism, particularly the French and Italian. So then when they have seen British and France, they are achieving a lot using divide and rule methodology to split everything, split everything what they could. And then afterwards, in 1916, in the time of the war, they drafted the map, 1916, it was called the map of Sykes-Picot. In this, they decided to create 4 key states, because the Arabs had a history as the biggest nation in the Middle East, and then the Persian are the second, and the Arabs are the third biggest nation in the region, and also those from the tradition of being kingdoms. So the Turks have been taking the legacy of the Ottomans, the Persian, the Safavids, empire, dynasty, etc. So what they said, well, we will create 4 states in this region, but we can't trust them. The Turks would never give up the dream of Ottomans. The Persian also wouldn't say, well, we have been the civilization of the region. And the Arabs would say, well, we created Islam, so how to control this? And then have saying, well, in these territories of these empires are people called Kurds. And these Kurds have been organized in tribal structures, not unified. We can use them. We use the Kurds and the Iraqi territory against the Arabs, against the Iraqi state, and the Kurds in Turkey against Turkey, and then others against Syria and Iran. So that was the idea behind. And the peak of this, of Sykes-Picot, is the Conference of Cairo in 1921, where Lord Curzon playing key role, together with Winston Churchill.
Because earlier, I think there was some promise of autonomy for Kurds, right? But when Lord Curzon came in, that's when the things, started going south for Kurdistan, right? The autonomy was nuked.
No, from 1916, the Sykes-Picot Agreement, until 1923, when everything was then finalized by the Agreement of Lausanne. In between, there have been 6 conferences. There was a conference in Italy, city of San Marino, where they drafted this agreement for the conference of Sèvres 5 months later in France. In this agreement of Sever, there have been 3 articles in which they say we should create decentralized nation states, which means offering other ethnic groups than the majority ethnic groups, giving them some kind of autonomies. And Article 61, 62, 63 in the agreement of Sever, they're offering Kurds kind of autonomy. So then the Turks have been opposing this. The Turkish parliament rejected later on. The Turkish delegation signed already in August 1920 this agreement of Sever. But the Turkish parliament rejected. It was not ratified by the new Turkish parliament. And then the British said, okay, we are not going to make our allies unhappy. So then in Cairo, in the last conference before the Lausanne Treaty, what they did was saying, we should sacrifice the Kurds to the Turks and others. That's the best way. And there's a saying of Winston Churchill, you never let the Kurds to heal. They must stay wounded. They must bleed every time. So because Curzon was the one who said in the conference of Cairo, it was about organizing the Arab countries, like Iraq particularly. And the idea was to bring King Faisal to rule Iraq, and then the father of the current king of Jordan. So this have been cleared, but in case of Iraq, the question was, should we offer the Kurds autonomy in Iraq or not? Then Curzon said no. And Lord Curzon and Churchill agreed to keep the Kurds as a tool against Arabs, particularly against Iraq. Because they knew in Iraqi Kurdistan there's oil in the cities, in the areas of Kirkuk and Mosul. And they knew that if they would offer Kurds autonomy, they will get trouble with the Turks. So what they did was sacrificing the Kurds. And this is the beginning how the Kurds made it to a problem. And this is called the Kurdish question. So let them stay wounded. It means you can't live, but you can't die. It's a kind of in-between.
Yeah.
And this is a different form of colonialism, which was imposed on us.
Yeah, I mean, Winston Churchill had a lot of, terrible things to say about Indians also. He called us beastly people with beastly religion. But this is how they divided up.
Yes, but then I must add one important thing also with Winston Churchill. Immediately after this Cairo conference, there was an uprising in Iraqi Kurdistan against the British, led by Sheikh Mahmoud Barzanji. He was sent to exile to India for 1 year. And then they used napalm bombs to silence the Kurds.
Really?
Yes.
At that time?
Yes. And then it became on the international agenda, this problem using of chemicals. And then some journalists interviewed Churchill, why did you do that? And then he said, well, these are barbaric tribes. We have to disciplinize them. They don't understand of civilization. So they have to learn who is the ruler. So...
And millions of people, I think in 1933 or around that time, 1940s, millions of people in West Bengal died of famine that was actually created by, British and under Churchill. So, a lot of horrible things at that time. Can you explain to the people what is so different about Kurds, how they are different, for example, compared to Iranians or, Iraqis or, Turks? Because sometimes, at least Turkey folks in the state, they used to call you mountain Turks, right? So, always used to downplay your identity, unique identity. So, can you explain to the people in India how their culture is, what are their practices, so people can maybe relate to some of them? Because India and Kurds have very ancient links, that region at least. So language also, there is some words are very similar. It's very interesting.
Well, first I have to say that the Kurds have been the ancient people of Middle East next to the Armenians and Assyrians and also Persians. Turks came later on 1,200 years from Mongolian steppes, crossing our land. But before that, there was already a cradle of civilization of Mesopotamia, and I would say Kurds have been contributing a lot because domestication of animals, agriculture started in Upper Mesopotamia, which is the northern part of Iran, the Zagros Mountains, where the basic country of the Kurds, the Zagros mountainous areas actually, and Kurdistan has a lot of water. It was very suitable for agriculture. So let's say the discovery of beer, of bread, wheat, and so was discovered in this region by the Aryanic people, and we are descendants of the Aryan people.
So Kurds also consider themselves as descendants of Aryans.
Yes, we and the Persians. Okay. So we are close. We say we are stepbrothers, step sisters today, but we are from the similar roots. So Aryanic people. And then recently, 20 years ago, they find out that in the region which is in between Turkey and Syria, they found out monuments of 10,000 years old. And now they're going deeper, digging to find new monuments, and now they discovered some monuments are 12,000 years old, so it means elder than the pyramids in Egypt. So you see, it's a very ancient culture, this region, and the Kurds have been always there. So the Turks came later, and the Arabs, all the Semitics came from the desert to the north. We are people of the north, mountainous, water-rich areas. And the Turks came the late one, so Persians, and we have been always there, and the Armenians. When the Turks came, they came by the horses, as you know, the descendants of Genghis Khan, whatever. So killing, murdering, robbery, kidnapping, that was a culture. No, it's not the society which was productive in the steppes in Mongolia. And then Mesopotamia was rich. So there was a civilization, people have been living in welfare, and the Kurdish tribe, it was the time of the best time for the Kurds and for all the ethnic groups there. So then Turks cut at everything. They came by aggression. And as the ancient people, I think our failure was open the gates for the Turks. And I always say, in some parts, I'm not happy and proud of some tribes who opened the gates for the Turks passing our land, really. But generally, Kurds are the Kurdish language. We have 4 dialects. We do understand each other when we listen carefully. So, and then we have, of course, local accents and so. And Kurdish belongs to the Indo-European language family group, like Persian, and that's why we have also similarities with Urdu. And when I was first time in India, 2008, I was surprised when I heard people saying Azadi to freedom like we do, and then like say numbers, yek. You say ek, we say yek. Yeah. But the Kurds in Iraq say also ek. And then char, pinch, and then hazar.
Yeah. Dushman also?
Yes.
Enemy?
Yeah. And then dil means heart. Yeah. And also love. Gul, we say through the rose. And then I find out motifs on the fabrics for sari, for example, here. We have similar motifs in our carpets.
Oh.
Yeah. And then the other thing, the saris are very colorful. Our women's traditional clothing are very colorful. And that's the thing what I discovered. I think there must be much more than I have seen, because I'm just for a short time here. So everyone, when I come just for 1 week, but there's a need to go deeper to research for the common cultural values we have. So I think greetings and the relation between elders and youngs are very same. We are respecting always the elders, whether a man or father or the mother, grandfather. So the the social structures are also somehow similar, particularly the relations between young and elders.
Okay, so there is a respect.
Yes.
Lot of
respect.
And living together as family.
Yes.
Okay.
I think until through the generation they're living under one roof. It was
Okay.
in the past, but now because of urbanization, things has changed. But in the traditional society, yes.
So, what is the history of Kurds and their relationship with the different states? For example, how they have transacted with, say, Iranian state, how they have dealt with Iraqis. What happened in between 1930 or 2010, and how Kurds dealt with all these 4 different states?
I would say the first thing what have been done in Kurdistan was to overcome the strategy of British and France, the policy of dividing the Kurds. So our problem was we have been always questioning ourselves, since the First World War until today. I don't know how many uprisings we had, rebellions. We never accepted foreign colonialism. Nor the Turkish one, neither the Arab one, nor the Persian one. Never. The Kurds never gave up. However, I was always asking myself, my God, the first one started in 1866 in Iraqi Kurdistan against Ottomans when they used force against the tribes for demographic changes in Iraqi Kurdistan. The first started that. Then later on it's continued. Always uprisings against British, against French, but mostly against the Turks. Because it's a different form of colonialism we're facing. So it's not just the issue ethnic cleansing like they did with the Armenians and the Assyrian people. Just 1 year time, there have been genocided 1.5 million Armenians in 1915. The Turks did, and also 500,000 of the Syriac Christians. But in our case, they haven't used this frame of physical genocide. What they did was a permanent situation of genocide, the blooded one and the white one. The white one is assimilation. Let's say they have used, can you imagine, it's not allowed that you speak your language. And you're not allowed to use your names.
Your names also?
Yes, they have been changing the names of Kurdish villages, Kurdish cities, Kurdish rivers, Kurdish mountains, Kurdish humans. So, and then, for example, in Turkish letters, in Turkish alphabet, there's no Q, W, X, but in Kurdish they exist. So if you, for example, write your child's name with W, it's forbidden in Turkey because this letter doesn't exist in Turkish, but in Kurdish.
Okay.
I witnessed myself in 1990 when I was in Kurdistan, in Turkish part. Our national colors are red, yellow, green, the Kurdish, everywhere. So, and the traffic lamps have the same color, red, yellow, green. In Turkey, in the Kurdish areas, they replace green with blue. Yeah.
Okay. So this is kind of cultural denial to...
Total annihilation, denial.
Okay.
The Kurds shouldn't exist
as a separate people.
Yes,
there
there are
should
no
not be
Kurds,
any...
there are mountainous Turks, unprivileged, uncivilized people who live in the caves. Imagine ancient people contributed to civilization, then being looked down by one who's even not a civilization. And forbidding everything of yours. And this is they have never forbidden Armenian language. They're just physically killing them all, 1.5. But in ours, it was a permanent, continued, systematic genocide. So we say white genocide. And when you go to school, you have to deny, say the Kurdish language is a backward language. The most progressive is the Turkish. And the students and the children, even in primary school, they have been forced to become, to spy, whether their parents speaking Kurdish at home or not. That was the Turkish kind of oppression.
I think that kind of thing happened in Nazi Germany, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. You can
people used to spy on their neighbors, their parents, their colleagues.
Yeah. And this is the part which we have difficulties to explain. why the main threat amongst these four states is a Turkish one. Arabs and Persians, they say they are Kurds. But in Turkey, they used to say there are no Kurds, they're all Turks, but Mantuan is Turks. It's a process of denial. You see the problem of, they say you are not present. You shouldn't exist. So, but they couldn't achieve all these strategies of annihilation, denial, because the Kurds never gave up. It's ancient people, enjoyed long time of their history in freedom, because we say when we are in mountains, we have water, we are free. People who are living their country, we are quite strong patriots, have a close relation to our land.
But how would you explain that, why they have not physically tried to exterminate the Kurdish people, but they have done it for, Armenians and other ethnicities? But why not Kurds? Do they have a separate perception of Kurds compared to other?
I would say it's because the British convinced the Turks make use of the card.
Okay.
So, for example, when the Kurds have been dealing with the British over Iraq, and they say, well, when you support the Kurds in Turkey, I will support the Kurds in Iraq at that time, in the 1920s. And this is a strategy. So now is a similar thing. So when US saying, I will support the Kurds in Syria, then Turkey would support the Kurds in Iraq against the US, because US has also interest in Iraq. So this game is still continuing, but is not so effective like it was in the beginning, because the Kurds made a lot of changes. And I would say what changed our fate in the end of the 20th century was we had a new modern movement, which started by students in Turkey. Kurdish students under the leadership of the Kurdish people's leader Abdullah Öcalan. The main question why they founded this movement as a result of all this tragedy, and people used to say PKK is the 29th uprising, the last one, and we hope it will be the last one. So they said, okay, the enemies can do everything what they want, but the problem is why the Kurds can't succeed in their uprisings, why there's no victory after all the uprisings. Because people are resisted heroically, really.
Yeah.
Our history is full of heroic songs, etc. But without result. We sacrificed thousands of lives, but we couldn't change the circumstances of colonialism. And then the beginning of this movement is questioning the Kurdish society. We change first ourselves, then we can change the others. So, and this is the beginning of a modern time of the Kurds. So let's say when people is not allowed to write in their language, to speak in their language, when the people are forced to deny auto-assimilation, we call it auto-assimilation, deny yourself, try to be best Turks, speaking the best Turkish. I think you had similar experiences in India.
Yeah. With English.
Yes, with
course.
English.
Yeah.
We have the same trouble with Turkish. Whoever speaks the best Turkish is somehow upgraded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
High culture.
Yeah. And then all this starts to become a process of shaking after the PKK was saying to the people, hey, you are Kurds. You are the ancient people here. Now question yourself why you are now the slaves of the Turks, of the Arabs and the Persians. So, and then the key to societal transition in Kurdistan start to begin in the 90s. You know, the good thing for us was when the Soviet Union collapsed and unipolar politics turned to multipolar politics with thousands of conflicts and contradictions. It offers us new space because the states at that time in Turkey have been losing their importance like during the Cold War. So we're talking now about the post-Cold War time. And this offered the Kurds some new opportunities. So Turkey, like Iran, Iraq, Syria, they know that the region is going to be changed. So the rules of Britain and French, the Sykes-Picot Agreement, will be replaced by another actor. It was the US at that time, in the 90s, you know. That's why we said, okay, so then Turkey will now fear for their future. So because Turkey will be designed like Iran, Iraq, and Syria. So this is our time. And then what's happened is, interestingly, was exactly to this time, uprisings start in northern Kurdistan, Turkish part. So, and then with these uprisings, thousands of women, interestingly and surprisingly, have been joining the armed struggle of the PKK.
Yeah.
And the participation of women made the main turn in the Kurdish society, the main key of transition, social transition from being oppressed for liberation to liberation. And Öcalan, I can remember at that time, I was reading one of his articles. He said, the Kurdish men do believe they are very proud men, but how can you be proud when your country is occupied? When you're forced to be soldiers of others? When you're forced to learn what kind of man are you? Saying, I am the man, the king. You are king over the Kurdish women, but you are the slave of the other king, the Turkish king. And said, well, I have to change this man. And how he did was saying to the women, you are my strategic allies. With you, I will change this kind of rulers in our society. And then in the 90s, the process starts to change the Kurdish men. But first, the women have changed, liberating themselves from male domination. Because it was a fake male domination. You are a colony of Turkey. You are feeding this regime. They bring you make you to their own soldier. You're serving them 2 years. And they're humiliating you there because you're Kurdish. And then coming to home and say, I'm man. So and then start to make the change in the society.
That's quite innovative way of putting things.
I would say this is the unique part of the Kurdish movement. This specific point, social transition, societal transition from backwardness to modernization, progressive things.
In a language that, those men will understand.
Yes.
That is the brilliant part.
Yeah. Because you say you're a patriot, okay, but patriotism means you shouldn't be soldier of others. Then be your own soldier.
He's not coming and telling them about equality.
No,
he's coming from a different frame.
No. The Kurdish women actually never ask for equality because they say we are not copying the Western feminism. Because what does it mean having the same rights with the men? So in our culture, man has some rights, but they are bad. So why should we replace the man? Or being similar to the man? Why shouldn't we make it better? So this is the understanding. So that's why we are not going to copy the European feminism. We have to find our unique culture. We have to consider our society, our culture, our region. So we can learn from others, which is important. We did. But also finding our unique part of the things. As
someone like you who grew up in Europe, in Germany, how do you see that approach?
Well, Germany was one of the countries who was always supportive to Turkey, and that's why we have always a political trouble with Germany, because still they say Turks are our allies since the Ottoman Empire. There was a clash between France, Britain, and Germany, so they had enough wars in Europe. Then they came to Ottoman Empire and brought their war to Ottomans. So the Germans have been always supportive to the Ottomans. Later on to the Turks. We have a huge diaspora in Germany, nearly 1 million Kurds, and they're well organized. After the 90s, as I said, national consciousness began in Kurdistan, and then parallelly, the first shift start in the Sykes-Picot Agreement when the thing which they planned in the Cairo conference in 1921, not offering the Kurds autonomy in Iraq, let's say, in 1991, when the U.S. got trouble with Saddam, so that was the beginning of fall of Saddam, and then Saddam was weakened like Assad in 2012, and then the U.S. have seen that the Kurds can be natural allies, against Saddam, and then have helping the Kurds to create their autonomy in Iraqi Kurdistan. It was then formally done in 2003. So amongst the 4 colonial parts of Kurdistan, the first which became autonomy was Iraqi Kurdistan.
Which was promised 100 years back.
Yes, and then parallelly in Turkish part of Kurdistan, it was the time of uprisings. And also in Syria. In Iraq, the situation was different because since after 79, when the mullahs under Khomeini came to power, Iran started to become fundamental Shia Islam. But Shia Islam was used to maintain the state's power. Before it was Shah, but then the mullahs, it was different. But in 3 other parts in Kurdistan, there has been a wave of uprisings.
Because of the Shia Sunni, because Kurds are Sunni, right?
No, we have 8 faiths in Kurdistan. The ancient one is the Zoroastrian. Still, we have Zoroastrian Kurds.
Really?
Yes, and then we have Yazidi Kurds who are offspring of the Zoroastrian. Then we have the Alawite Kurds who are also from the ancient Kurdish religion of Zardeshti, Zoroastrian. And then we have Shia Kurds called Feylis. We have Shebek Kurds, also different religion. And then we have the Alawite Kurds are different in Iran, in Iraq, and Turkey. So, but all are offspring of Zoroastrian. So, and I was fascinated when
Bashar al-Assad was Alawite, right?
Yes, but the Kurdish
Kurdish.
is different than the Arab and Turkish one.
Yeah.
The Kurdish one is a continuation with different forms of Zoroastrian. And then we have Sunni Islam. But the Kurds, in Sunni Islam, there are 4 directions. The Turks are Hanafi, the Kurds are mostly Shafi. So I don't know why, but even in Islam, there are different orders. So the Kurds are not the one from the Turks. They have different, chosen for a different school in Islam, Sunni Islam. But majority are Sunni Islam. But generally, when I summarize, all the Kurds are very secular people. Islam was forced through the time of Omar by force. So Kurds fought a long time against Islam because they tried to keep their ancient religion. And in case of Islam, however, the majority of the Kurds are followers of Sunni Islam, but Islam became then a threat to the Kurds when it became a tool of the colonial powers. Let's say after the 90s years, the policy of Green Belt, which the US was using in Afghanistan, the similar was happened in Turkey. So against the influence of Soviet Union until the 90s years, the green policy of Green Belt, Islam as a color green, and at the border regions between Turkey and Russia, so Turkey was bordering Soviet Union through Armenia, etc. They said we have to build much more mosques in this bordering region to prevent the influence of socialism to Turkey. Because Turkey was member of the NATO, Turkey was close to Europe geographically. So the European invested in Turkey to prevent influence of Islam, of communism. That's why they have been supporting Islam. And since Islam is then a kind of tool, so when people say I'm Islam, what do you think about Islam? I would say I don't know which Islam you mean. The Turkish version of Islam, the Saudi Arabian version of Islam, the Iranian version of Islam. Which Islam do you mean?
Okay, so there is a difference in these 3.
Yes, because all the states, maintain states' power. Whatever, it's capitalism, it's communism, it's Islam, they don't care. Important is to maintain power.
So can you explain the difference from your perspective? What is the Turkish version of Islam? What is Islam? Iraqian and Syrian and Iranian. How do they interpret it differently to retain their own state power?
Well, the Turkish one can give a concrete example. When in the 90s, when we start with uprisings against the Turkish regime everywhere in the cities. And our diplomacy increased in Europe against the Turkish state in the international arena. We brought everywhere Turkish as a problem to us. What then the state did was getting this other guy who, his name was Fethullah Gülen. He's the one actually, he was supported to build up the mosque against the Soviet Union. His first association called the Association for Defeating Communism. So he's coming from that part. And it was clear that he is the follower of the Green Belt policy. So what they did then, saying, hey, people, you are Kurds, okay, we are Turks, but we are all Muslims. Using the Islamic card to deny our right of being Kurds, rejecting our ethnical identity. Particularly when the Kurds start for national confidence, national unity, all the different faiths in Kurdistan, people of different faiths started to work with each other and all say we are Kurds, however we have different faiths, but we are Kurdish. And then the state start to say, okay, you are Kurdish, because they couldn't deny. We have achieved a level where we said to the state, you can't now deny us. You have done everything. We still exist. And then they say, okay, you exist as a Kurds. We have a Kurdish reality, but then, brothers and sisters, listen, we are Muslims. We said, yes, but we are Kurdish. Our problem is not the religion. Our problem is, are you going to give us constitutional recognition in your constitution or not? Are you going to withdraw all the legal frame which forbid our language, education in mother tongue, our customs, our culture? Are you going to respect this and giving it constitutional recognition or not? Islam is a private issue. We are secular. And our secularism means we don't reject any religion. And we already implemented this in northern Syria. And in case of the Arabs believe Islam belonged to them, which is right, because they created Islam. Prophet Muhammad did.
So how their version is different from Turkish?
In Syria, when they imprisoned Kurdish politicians, they said, not just Muhammad, but also Allah as Arab. And with the Ba'ath regime, Syria was secular. Syria hasn't much made use of Islam because the majority of the Arab in Syria are Sunni and the regime was Alawi. So there was contradiction of religion. Iraq was also not so harsh with religion like Turkey and Iran were using, because the majority of the people, Iraqi Arabs, are Shia, and the regime was Sunni by Saddam.
Yeah. So
and this was a game of British, the minority brought to power over the majority and creating clashes between the Arabs, splitting the Arabs in Shia and Sunni. And in Syria, Alawi and Sunni Arabs. And I think because the Ba'ath parties, they have been supported by Soviet Union, somehow they haven't put priority on religion.
Okay.
But Turkey did, because the most uprising, Iraq, Iran, and Syria are where the states who have used the name of Kurds. They say there's Kurd, that we have Kurds. But in Turkey, they say there are no Kurds. This is the main difference. So total denial.
They don't even admit that you have a separate Kurdish
They say there are no
identity.
Kurds. There are no Kurds, Turkey said.
Oh.
But Iran, Iraq, Syria said there are Kurds.
And how many people are there? For example, how many Kurds are there in Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Syria?
We count totally 60 million Kurds. 30 million are in Turkey. Turkey has the biggest part of Kurdistan.
And they are the ones who deny it. Yeah. They have the biggest majority of Kurds living there.
Yeah. And the second part is Iran, 15 million. The third one is Iraq, 6 to 7 million. The third part was in Syria, 2 to 3 million. And then we have nearly 2 million diaspora in the former Soviet Union, Russia, Armenia, Kazakhstan, etc. And then we have Kurdish diaspora in Egypt, in Lebanon and Jordan. Also a few Kurdish villages in Sudan. They came during the time of, what was his name? Salatin the Great.
Okay.
And then we have 2 million in the European diaspora.
The best relationship, I don't know which country would you say that your Kurds have the best relationship out of these four, but the worst is definitely Turkey.
Oh yes,
right?
Yeah.
And it started with I think Atatürk, Kemal Atatürk.
Yeah.
1920s.
And you have here a square called Mustafa Kemal Atatürk in Delhi.
Yeah. I mean, because of, I think...
it was because of the British thing, because both have been
not
fighting.
even that, I would say, I think it is because of Nehruvian, his idea of secularism. And I think Atatürk is considered as a very secular figure in that sense that he did not promote that kind of things that, whatever Erdogan
I
is
think
doing.
it was a good option for the Turks, Atatürk. I mean...
For Turks, you can
in
say.
case of Kurds, for the Turks, I think he was a good leader of Turkey. And he was able to achieve a lot during the First World War for Turkey, at least to maintain some of the territory of Ottomans.
At least he didn't, pander.
And he was secular,
Yeah, he didn't, I mean, he didn't himself believe that, there is some, whatever Erdogan is doing is basically quite opposite of that person, right?
Yes,
politically and...
political Islam.
Yeah, political Islam.
I must say,
promote.
I'm really wanted to be misunderstood. I'm not against Islam because as a woman and as someone who's acting in Middle East, I have to know the religion very well.
Yeah.
And I can assure you that the things I understood from history of Islam is not the things what they're imposing on us.
For example?
Let's say the relation with the two women or to other ethnic groups. We know that 624, Prophet Muhammad was signing agreement with non-Muslims. It's called the Medina Agreement. So he was... There were Jewish in this region and non-Muslim Arabs. Not all have been immediately follow of Prophet Muhammad, but he said our relation must be based on mutual respect. And there's the so prominent agreement of Medina from 624.
But wasn't that before the followers?
No, he was right.
Before he was in, majority with all his followers.
He had always. There were some tribes who have been rejecting to become Muslims, convert to Islam. With them, he said, "Okay, you can keep your identity, but we have to learn to survive together in coexistency." And then also the issue of women, for example. He was not the one who have been kidnapping women praising kidnapping women after the war. So this was given to Islam later on.
But
many
this
things
is
like
in,
what the Islamic
Hadith,
State,
right? There's war booty, woman as war booty and all that.
Yes, this all came after him. Like Jesus, what he did in Israel at that time in Palestine, and then what came out in Christianity in Europe is different things. At the beginning, all of the religion are very revolutionary, even the Islam one. But the purpose of Prophet Muhammad was, of course, to organize the Arabs. And Islam is based on economy. So it's Arabic. It was for the benefit of the Arabs. But then later on, when the Arabs were united under the umbrella of Islam, then they tried to spread their
with
power
the sword
and then force the people to convert to Islam, like in our case. And then now, when Islamic State, IS has an interpretation of Islam, Turkey has one, Iran has one, Saudi Arabia has one, Qatar.
And
It depends on their benefits. No,
and
really.
nobody agrees with each other.
No, then you ask, what is then Islam? What?
Yeah.
So, and we say, listen, you can't be Muslim. We don't care. But our problem is not with the religion. Our problem, we are Kurdish. We want to be considered as Kurdish and we want to be recognized as Kurdish. So keep your Islam for yourself. But what we ask is not for Islam. We want to survive as Kurds. We are Kurdish. And amongst the Kurds whoever want to be what is their issue. For us, we have some golden principles, which is the way to learn mutual respect of diversity. Let's say, when you are Alawi, you have to respect Sunni Islam. Sunni Islam has to respect Yazidis, Zoroastrians, etc. And we achieved this in our society. We have a kind of harmony in our society. This is our secularism. And all this is done through the women's movement. We implemented already this idea in Syria. So when we took over, when we defeated IS in 2014, then we said we have to make the things different. So because of demographic changes, they brought Arabs in our region in Syria, in the area of Rojava. We call it Rojava, the western part of Kurdistan. They have been settling Arabic tribe in the Kurdish areas so that Arabs can control the Kurds. And then when Syria started to collapse in 2012, we took over the control for our settlements areas. And then the question was what to do with the Arabs here. They are not people of our region. Some of them came from Saudi Arabia 4 centuries ago. Shall we say you leave our country, or should we make it different? Are we going to create new civil war in our region, or are we going to choose the smart way? And we said the smart way is the best. We will say you stay here. We have been living, sharing, exchange. We have been in exchange for a few centuries. And we said to the Armenians and the Assyrians, you are ancient people of here. So we 4 ethnic groups, including the Cherkess, 5 ethnic groups. The Cherkess came from Cherkessia. We have to learn to survive without the state. And if we can survive in coexistence based on mutual respect, then we can, for example, build here the new Syria, the future Syria here. And I would say we did. So there are Christians, we have Alawis, Yazidi Kurds, Muslim Kurds, Orthodox Christians. Armenians and Assyrians are Orthodox Christians. And we can, so you keep your religion with you, it's your private issue. But administration, trade with oil, etc., we have to deal together, learn together to rule. And for 12 years it survived.
Then what happened?
Yes, then Turkey was always intervening. So it was not so easy, like I say. First, we sacrificed 12,000 men and women in the fight against IS. 12,000 young...
In Syria?
Yes, just in the smallest part of Kurdistan in Syria. And we have been also sacrificing hundreds of Peshmerga martyrs in Iraqi Kurdistan against IS. I always say, what would happen to the world if they would be able to create the caliphate from Mosul to Raqqa, crossing borders of Kurdistan. Yeah. So because that was the purpose
of ISIS.
ISIS was already in Mosul. And Mosul is bordering to our region, Syria, and then passing to Raqqa after bringing all Rojava under control. So then 2 parts of Kurdistan would become the new caliphate. And then imagine you would have a worse than Afghanistan in that region. Yeah. So that's why, and we said, no, these barbars, these gangs, these criminals, these terrorists, we wouldn't allow them to occupy our land. And for that, we have been sacrificing 12,000 young men and women. Amongst them have been also Arabs who have been cooperating with us. Europeans came, and Christians, but the 95% have been Kurds who died. So this was our contribution to global security, because you have to go back at that time. I was there. I was right there in Erbil. I know the night 1 week before they came to Mahmur is the Kurdish city in Iraqi Kurdistan, 50 kilometers far from the capital Erbil. They came in the night. There's a castle in Erbil. I was there. We have an office there. And they came and spread the news that they will come and occupy Erbil. And they were carrying the black flags of ISIS on the castle and spreading leaflets everywhere in Arabic and in Kurdish, we are coming. And then we heard they are preparing to come from the east to occupy. And then our people, the fighters of the PKK, have been preventing them in building a wall against them 50 kilometers far away. So we could save them Erbil. I was there in the night.
Yeah.
And then
what made you go there? Because you were
we have an office there.
Okay.
We have an office in Syria, in the Syrian Kurdistan part in Qamishlo, and one in Erbil. Our headquarters in Brussels, and we recently opened office in Washington, D.C. So, and as member of the Executive Council and also responsible for foreign affairs, I have to travel. We have members everywhere. So, and when we are going to take a strategic decision, we are running to every places to get ideas and contribution from our members.
So when Assad got weakened with all the civil war in Syria, you got a chance to do this experiment, Rojava, right? And then what happened is now there is a different administration in Syria, right? So what is the situation now?
Well, we had I would say we have built something fantastic, which offers hope for the whole region. Let's say showing that different ethnic groups, different religion can survive together when you have a common ground and principles together, created principles. But in the meantime, in the last 12 years, I don't know, there was no single day where we haven't been threatened by Turkey. The reason, the European left, for example, is accusing us that we brought the US to there. So it was not us who brought someone to there. The people came. Nobody asked us. Like Britain haven't asked the Indians to come to India. Okay, but we needed the US there because otherwise Turkey will eliminate us. So this part, we have the longest border with Turkey is in Syria. 900 kilometers border with Turkey. I mean, I said Turkey, but on the other side of the border are Kurds and in the Syrian side are Kurds. This was our land. So, and the borderline was drawn in the Treaty of in Lausanne in 1923. The men have been sitting on a table and saying, well, we should give this village to Turkey and this village to Syria.
Yeah, and both are Kurds.
You wouldn't believe me. I was in Qamishlo in the Kurdish city on Syrian side. I can't go to Turkey, by the way.
Yeah.
You know what I've seen when they draw the border? The private part of a house they give to Turkey. No, really. The official part, I mean the guest room, etc., have given to Syria.
Yeah, because they just drew the line.
They have been drawing the border to a house.
Yeah, because they don't know. They have never been there, right?
No, they haven't been there. Yeah. But then the family
the same thing with Radcliffe in India. He never came to India.
Our sleeping room is on the Turkish side. Our kitchen is there. It was like that. No, when Assad gone, the first time when we know Assad was weak. He was busy with protecting Damascus, Aleppo, etc., etc. We said to him right at the beginning, hey, we are the people from here. And already, after the Arab Spring, 2010, Öcalan was urging his movement, saying, listen, the fire is coming from Cairo to Damascus. So Damascus, it's a turn on Damascus now. Take measures. And then what the PKK did was sending all their fighters from Syria, Kurdish Kurds from Syria, back to Syria. You go and take care. Prepare for any change of Syria. So we should be careful. When there's a vacuum, it shouldn't affect us. We should make use of the vacuum.
PKK is basically Kurdish militia, for people who don't know. Yeah.
The Kurds and Workers' Party, the one who changed the whole history of the Kurds, actually,
Yeah.
but it's dissolved last year.
Yeah.
Well, and then the Kurds.
But you have, militia, armed militia, and they have been instrumental in protecting your people, right? So that is another aspect that we need to talk about, because their role is very important across all the regions.
Yes, all these heroes, I said 12,000 sacrifices are fighters from YPG, and then HPG, and then the unit of women of goddess Ishtar, and then we have also in Iran. In Iraq, we have Peshmerga, so it's a different case. This is actually the problem now. So we are talking in Syria now after 12 years experience, and then recently Turkey was agreeing with the US, Israel, that Turkey would keep blind eye when Israel got in good relation with Ashara for southern Syria because it's bordering Israel. And then Israel and US should keep blind eye on the northern part of Syria, which is Kurdish area. So and then somehow they agreed, somehow we don't know how. And then they start recently on the 6th of January to attack us, the Turks. And then in the meantime, the imprisoned Kurdish leader Abdullah Öcalan, who is since 27 years in prison in Turkey, he was starting a kind of dialogue process with the Turkish regime last year. He said to the state, hey, if you talk to me as a Kurdish, then why you kill my brothers and sisters in Syria? They are Kurdish. If you continue to go ahead for ethnic cleansing of the Kurds in Syria, I would block the process. So that's why Turkey kept away.
So Turkey is not only denying you all the rights and all the things in Turkey to Kurds in Turkey, but they are also going in other countries and killing Kurds there.
In Paris, yeah. Erdogan said, even if there would be Kurds in Africa, I will go and fight them. No, really.
This is the crazy level of hate they have for Kurds.
Yes, and if you would ask me why, I would say I don't know. It's a sickness, psychological problem. It's a phobia. And
what is the percentage of total population of Turkey?
Turkey has now total is 82 million, I guess, and then
30 million.
Yeah. It can be something between 25-30 million. So we say the biggest city of the Kurds in Turkey is Istanbul. Just there are 5 million Kurds in Istanbul. Yeah.
So 1/3 of population. Yeah. That is crazy.
5 million just in Istanbul.
I can understand now, because if you have 1/3
the problem is what they're fearing now is saying, Erdogan was always saying they have stolen the land of my fathers to the British. He was accusing the Lausanne Treaty. Say, Turkey was so big, Ottomans went until Malaysia. So what do we have this small part now?
Okay.
I'm not satisfied with that, he said, always. But that's why we're speaking about the strategy of neo-Ottomanism.
Yeah, you wrote an article on that.
Yes,
also.
and what they say is they can get back their land. Their land means our land. So according to their understanding is that northern Iraq is the former province of Mosul, of Ottomans. And that is western Kurdistan, Rojava in Syria, is the former province of Aleppo of the Ottomans. And they want to annex them to Turkey. So they saw that when Assad went in a crisis in 2012, it was a dream of Turkey. So Assad is weak, so we go and occupy the north. But since they couldn't do this with their army, what they did was bringing the IS.
So they were supporting
the proxies,
ISIS.
Of course, they have been supporting the Islamic State.
Yeah.
And then the same they did also in Iraqi Kurdistan. So when after Saddam gone, without the US, Turkey would never allow us to get autonomy in Iraq, because Iraq is bordering, because both sides of the border is Kurdish. What Turkish fear is, and I don't know, because in the past the Kurds dreamed to have a state of their own. And Turkey at that time accused us until the 90s that we are separatists. We were known as a separatist. And all the states have been supporting Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Syria, since they said the Kurds are going to create a state. even if we were to have a state, it's on our own land. We're not
You
going
didn't come
to,
from anywhere else
for
to
example,
occupy the
and then later on we said, well, there must be another solution for freedom, because state was a guarantee of being free. Then later on, when we have seen that states like Iraq is collapsing. Iraq was a very welfare, powerful state. And then other states, after the Soviet Union, the crisis started, new nation states have been built. We have seen all the crisis of destroying some new states and creating new, and then said there must be another way for freedom. And we said, okay, it must be possible to have create freedom, base for freedom step by step in the current existing borders, which means forcing the states for transition towards federation. Then we will become autonomy, belonging to the central government, but kind of decentralized structures. That's what we are looking for now. I mean, we of course we have the right and we have the power in the current circumstances to fight for a state. But this is not a smart way. Because since 90 years in the Middle East, Libya was a welfare state under Gaddafi. You shouldn't underestimate the power of Libya at that time. It was rich, welfare. And then Iraq was a welfare state. They sold cheap oil, wealthy country. And Syria was the same. And Yemen. And Sudan. All gone. So it means when you are not organized, when you are not smart enough, when you are not foreseen of strategies and things in the region, you can go, even your nation state. So then, understanding, saying to our people, hey, listen, look, they have a nation state, but even the state couldn't prevent a civil war in their countries. What we can do is saying to the Turks, Arabs, listen, decentralize your state, autonomy for us, autonomy for others, in the current existing borders. This is our compromise, no to all. But Turkey says, the most fear of Turkey is, since it's a geostrategic issue for Turkey. Look, Turkey's neighbor is Syria. But before they go to Syria, they have to pass Kurdistan, the Kurdish region in Syria, is north. And on the other hand of Turkish side is also Kurdish. So Turkey has Iraq as neighbor. So northern part of Iraq, which is close to Turkish border, is Kurdish. And on the other side of the border, on the Turkish side, are also Kurdish. And Turkey has Iran as neighbors on the east. So on the other side of the border, Iranian part is Kurdish, and also on the Turkish side of the border is Kurdish. And Turkey say, when Kurds are getting autonomies around me, then I have just Kurds as neighbors.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
I will lose Arabs as neighbors. I will lose Iran as neighbor, Iraq and Syria. I would just have then Armenia up in the north where I came from. It's my area. And then Bulgaria on the west. And then Greek. So, and the other problem of Turkey is why they recently start to attack us. You know, I was here in India 2023 when there was the G20 meeting here. And there was a talk about the Indian Middle East Economic Corridor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Erdogan was here. And when there was a kind of agreeing on a frame of this IMEC, Erdogan immediately said, no, you can't bypass Turkey.
Yeah, he said that.
Because this road wouldn't pass Turkey. And then for the transfer to Europe, Cyprus became important. Because one part of this IMEC is passing the Mediterranean Sea, crossing Cyprus through Greece, etc. And you know, Cyprus, one part of Cyprus also occupied by Turkey, the northern part, since 1974. And now most of the states who are interested in IMEC are helping Cyprus, the southern part. And the Cyprus are saying, no, okay, if you need me, then liberate the northern part from the Turks. This is another challenge for them.
Yeah.
And then during the war between Israel and Hamas, Turkey was speaking on behalf of the Palestinians, but by same they have been providing oil to Israel. And you see double game, hypocrisy, Turkish one. And then later on, it come up, so the truth came up. So then people say, hey, you are speaking on behalf of Islam and you are speaking on behalf of the Palestinians. What's this? So Turkey lost face. And then when after Gaza, Israel became an important actor in the region, so through the Abraham Agreement with the Arab states, Israel had then one other problem with Syria, the southern part of Syria, the Golan Heights. There have been a lot of wars. Israel's purpose was to guarantee safety. And Turks said, well, Israel doesn't trust me as a nation state, and Israel is looking for much more power in the region, and they would look for new partners. And who else has trouble with the Turks, Arabs, and Persians? The Kurds. So, and Turkey was fearing that Kurds can be supported by Israel. But it's their perspective, it's not our perspective. So the same way they did with U.S. when they came to Syria. Since we are in dialogue with the U.S., whatever on military level, but recently they allowed us to open office in Washington, D.C. That's a good one. Turkey's relation between U.S. and Turkey got weak. Because Turkey said, I am a member of the NATO, you're a strategic ally, why don't you allow me to beat the Kurds? And since then, Turkey's position in the region of Middle East is getting weak, more and more weak. Now Saudi Arabia is taking over the Islam card with Qatar. And this is a new threat for the region.
Yeah, I mean, Turkey has a lot of problem with India also, at least Erdogan. Recently we had a clash with Pakistan on Operation Sindoor. We conducted an operation, and Turkey actually supported Pakistan, fully supported. But I think it's because of Erdogan mostly.
Then it's the right time for India to support the Kurds.
Yeah,
and know why? Because I was asking myself when Öcalan, in the end of beginning 2024. The Turks went to the prison island of İmralı, where Öcalan is kept. And they said, listen, brother, we must talk to Öcalan. And then surprisingly, in October 2024, when they lost the war in Gaza by supporting Hamas, publicly the ultra-fascist chief of the party of Turkey, who hates the Kurds the most, said, I'm inviting Öcalan to speak in the parliament. And we all, what's happened? So then later on we understood it has something to do with the changes of the Middle East.
Yeah.
And Öcalan is very, very smart. He considered what's happened in Cyprus, the IMEC project, the loss of Islamic card, and the uprising of the Kurds in Syria against Turkey, and the economic crisis in Turkey, because the Turkish lira is not stable. You're losing always value. And secondly, Turkey has to pay a lot of debts to World Bank, etc., etc. It's collapsing economy. And he said, this is the right time. I accept your invitation. Let's talk. So and since a year, he's trying to talk with the Turkish regime. And he really, I have been studying a lot of conflict areas, how they solve the conflict areas, the Irish model, the South African, the Palestinian, and the Basque and Catalan model negotiation processes. None of them have been so ready to make compromises to the opponent like Öcalan did. He said, you call us the PKK as terrorists, okay, I will dissolve the movement, and he did. His movement made a congress and decided for dissolution of their movement, so PKK doesn't exist. In the 90s, you said you're separatists. We gave up the idea of nation state. We said we can have autonomies in decentralized structures. And then you said terrorism, PKK will dissolve the PKK. So what? There are 30 million Kurds. They are not asking for a state. They are not terrorists. What to do? And then what they did, saying, well, we love the Kurds in Turkey, they are our brothers, sisters, but we killed in Syria. But we are all a nation.
Now, what does love mean when you are not even recognizing their language? You are not even,
Exactly.
accepting their culture. So, what does love mean in that
Honestly,
case? Nothing.
I mean, my job is also to understand my opponent very well.
Yeah.
I really can't. I have difficulties to. I mean, I understand the logic of a nation state of Turkey because I've been studying their history. It's the best opportunity they have now. The offers Öcalan made to them, because we would have other options. It's not that we depend on Turkey, because the region, the tactics are changing every day. There are no more strategic relations. It's accordingly.
True. The new
And
world order.
it's an interesting political nature now we have. Usually, logically, you wouldn't say that cooperation and confrontation can be symbiotic, but they are in our region.
But I always thought, like, why not, how is your relationship with the US?
Good.
Right?
No, that was...
It's not bad.
It's good. No, it's good now. Now it's very good because after we opened office there now, there was a special hearing in the House of... in the Congress for a few hours. And they all have been criticizing President Trump. So he said, they said you can't, even the Democrats, the Republicans, and also Democrats, and also the Republicans, they said, we can't betray the Kurds. It's a moral issue. And the Kurds are the only one who can guarantee us a IS-free zone.
And how is your relationship with, say, Israel?
We don't mind to speak to any of the states, whether
Not confrontational,
Israel
right?
is Israel is quite now our neighbor.
Okay.
So since they have influence in southern Syria and we are in the northern, we will our ways will cross.
And how is your relationship with Saudis?
Saudis have made it little bit difficult with Shara because it seems that Islam will change hand. So that's my personal fear. Since Prince Salman is on the stage, Saudi is doing a lot of reforms, and Saudi is also supporting the Abraham Agreement with Israel, which we do believe is good for the Arab-Israeli relations. Saudi Arabia is becoming a bit much Arabic. So, and we wish they would play a role of mediators between us and Al-Shara, and not forcing us. For example, in Syria, Shara was asking us we should reject the right of education in mother tongue in Syria. And in the last 12 years, we have a lot of universities, primary schools, kindergartens, in which we all teach in Kurdish, because it's our land. It's our area. And we hope that Saudi Arabia is able to convince Shara, so get him out from Turkish pressure. That's how Saudi Arabia can do, because they have influence, and Saudi Arabia is also helping Al-Shara militarily. We fear that there will be conflict between Saudi Arabia and Turkey. For short term, might be they will come together against Iran.
But they are
and
eventually...
Iran has a lot of... Iran lost all its proxies in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Syria, and the only place where they maintain power is Iraq. It could be that for a short term, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Al-Shara, including Saddam's daughter, they brought her daughter on the stage, they together can, for example, create a new Sunni front against Iran. But later on, they will attack each other because all of them want to get a piece of the cake from Iran.
Yeah. But don't you think that if, for example, if Kurdistan as a country, nation state materializes, taking parts of, say, Turkey and Syria, Iraq, Iran, wouldn't that be kind of net positive for Saudis? They may not like you, they may not like even the fact that you are finally a nation state. But wouldn't it be better because their main enemies, Iran, that gets weakened, Turkey, that gets weakened heavily because 1/3 of their nation is gone. So don't you think that would be better for them? I don't know. I don't understand the dynamics, but just trying to understand.
You know, they can be proud to be Arabs, I don't mind. But imposing Arabic chauvinism on us through Shara Assad, we can't accept. Whatever is coming from Qatar or Saudi Arabia, I don't care. We haven't bowed to Turkey, we wouldn't bow to Saudi Arabia, to no one. But I think Saudi Arabia can play a constructive role because they have more influence on the Syrian government now, and they have also good relation with the Kurds in Syria. And I know that many of the Kurdish delegation from Syria, from Rojava, went to Saudi Arabia to maintain dialogue with them. So there are kind of things. What I say is they can help, for example, to solve the Kurdish problem in Turkey by supporting the Kurds in Syria, for example, playing a leading role for recognition of the Kurds. Saudi Arabia has these opportunities. And, well, when you see there are always historical competition between Arabs, Turks, and Persians because of being the regional power of Middle East, so that's their problem, not ours. What we are, of course, it will affect us because we are in
the middle of everything.
Yes.
Basically, I think the ideal solution would be that you become the oasis in this desert, where you separate all these three: Turkey, Saudi, and Iran.
But you must. I don't know if
keep everyone at bay.
I don't know if you followed up what's happened in January when Turkey was planning to attack us in Syria. For the first time in our history, and I have been studying our history very well, we had a national mobilization. It was a kind of state of emergency. Millions of Kurds went on the streets, say, hey, you, Rojava is untouchable. It's our honor. It's the honor of the Kurds. And we sacrifice, we won't give you Rojava. And then this pressure from the public, and then later on, of course, we have a lot of people, friends everywhere in the world, and also some governments also not happy with that. But all together, we achieved that Washington heard our voice. So now, in the next time, there will be also a meeting in the Senate of the U.S. They will pass the bill, Save the Kurds Act. The act Save the Kurds. So, and since 3 days, a higher-ranking delegation of ours are now were invited to the Munich Security Conference. They have been speaking to the U.S. Foreign Minister for the first time officially, the German Foreign Minister, and 7 of U.S. senators came. They have been meeting all with our friends in Munich, in Germany, during the Munich Security Conference. This is for the first time we are now on the stage. Because, I was saying the things we are asking for are complying with the Universal Human Rights Declaration of the UN. For us Kurds in Europe, I say always the things what we want are complying with the European Convention on Human Rights. The only problem we have is the issue of self-defense. But unless there is Islamic State, and there are thousands of sleeping cells of theirs, and we don't know who's going to activate them. Unless Turkey is not able to de-escalate, accepting the compromises Öcalan made to them, unless Shara is not withdrawing his forces from our region, the sleeping cell, including the fractions under HTS's army, so we have to find ways to survive. We say, okay, we can give up all the arms, then bring a third party to here. The UN. Whoever you bring, we agree. But since Kurdistan was always in state of emergency for Turkey, the security zone for Syria, Iran, Iraq, we can't give up. How would we survive? They will finish us in one day. True. So then what is possible, bring mixed new international army, they should protect us. Then we give all the arms to them.
No, I think that is a very terrible strategy to, in hope of, appeasing whether all these countries, whether Syria or whether Turkey or other Iran or Iraq. I think one thing that Kurds should never do is give up their weapons. And I think it will be a big mistake. Even if you manage to achieve, democratic autonomy, you have certain rights, whatever you are demanding. Even then, I think arms is something that you should never give up as people, because today some some
easy
leader
to
might
say. No, it's not.
No, I'm saying today someone might agree to your demands.
Maybe we should ask for a third party to come to protect the UN, etc.
I mean, there is no UN now. It's like,
well, then let's say there's the European Union, there's African Union, Asian Union. India and Malaysia said, I don't know, some countries come together. We will accept this, coming to protect us.
Yeah, but who will put,
Because unless we have the
armies,
we have still 10,000s. Turkey will always.
But isn't that your biggest leverage?
Yes, of course.
Your armed militias are so effective.
There's a ceasefire. I wish our whole history is full of war, and our people deserve to have a kind of peace. Really peace. So, and we really do look for peace, nothing else.
Yeah, but for peace you have to wage
yes,
war.
but there must be other ways. Like I said, we had two options: whether we're insisting on nation state or say decentralized states of the current states, which take us as their citizens with equal rights, not individual rights but collective rights. So this is the problem.
But Turkey, for example, they will never agree to that. Even if you give
But Turkey
everything.
is not powerful like it was in the past.
Yeah. So the best case,
Cyprus, economic crisis in Caucasus now. So because of U.S. problem with China, Russia, all are looking partners in Caucasus, in the Turkic republics, where Turkey is my brothers. It's not like in the past. Turkey is getting weak and weak and weak.
Yeah, so
and this is our opportunity.
Best case scenario is to, break away from that as a part, break Turkey. But if you look at it actually, Syria, your people got reprieve and got good amount of autonomy only when the civil war was there, right? When the state got weakened, right? In Iraq, same. After Saddam, his regime fell, there was some, reprieve for Kurds. Iran, possibly the same way. And I am pretty sure Turkey will also, when there is civil war or when that country goes into something really terrible, only then your people will have that freedom or autonomy that you are seeking. So this is the way, right, in Middle East. Only when, state, the central leadership, or whoever the dictator is, that gets weakened, and then the people, to some extent, they get some freedom, autonomy, at least some people like Kurds. Of course, in generally, there is other movements like ISIS, they wreck the whole region. But only when there is no central authority, no dictatorship, no strong state, only then there is some kind of reprieve that people get. So this is how I see that, the Turkey problem of Kurds also will get resolved in that similar fashion. But it will take a huge major war of the world war level to achieve that, because Turkey will not go down that easily.
It is a strong state, but it's not strong as such as what it was in the past.
But I think it will...
Listen, unemployment is increasing in Turkey. When I'm not speaking about the domestic problems, but all the problems are increasing. And Erdogan and the circle around him are all corrupt, and people know that. And he have been losing 3 times elections. When we have been supporting the Turkish opposition, he lost elections recently also. So it's not that he can maintain his power.
And he's been there for quite a long time, so he has to go.
23 years, he has to go.
Yeah. But I'm saying that generally if you have US, Israel, and maybe say one of the strong states like Saudi in the region on your side, then I think you can achieve that nationhood that you are seeking. Now, of course, you have different demands of autonomy, but I think that can always change, and that should change, in my opinion, because this is ridiculous that Kurds as people are divided into these countries, and they are all living contiguously in that area, in that region. It should be one nation state. It's so common sense that anybody who's looking at the region will obviously come to that same conclusion. But I think the geopolitics of the last 100 years has made it so complex that even demanding that is a problem now. But I hope that you guys achieve that. But how can India be a factor in this? As you said, when it comes to Turkey, the way they are supporting Pakistan, India should also support Kurds. But how can we do that?
From Sykes-Picot to Lausanne, there have been 5 conferences how to make the Kurds to a problem. And we do believe this is the time the Kurds have a solution. We need a conference about the solution now. The others have been creating troubles for us. That's why we're asking for an international conference. And it can be under the umbrella of the UN or a participation or leading of the UN, or they think India can activate their relations in the UN to offer us, help us to have a Kurdish conference about the Kurdish solution, for the Kurdish solution. This is the right time. As you said, therefore, all the 4 states are shaking. And I'm sure there will be regime change in Iran soon. And then Turkey is to turn is on Turkey. I don't think the US will let Erdogan go like it is. So it's not the whole thing depends on us. There's also global dynamic to change the regional dynamics. So we try to find which is the best opportunity for us. And we do believe here now, to prevent any further damaging of wars, it will be good to have a conference for the Kurds, because I think we are the last hope for the region with the Kurds, with our experiment in North and East Syria, which is secular, which is based on coexistence of diversity, and we have shown it's possible. You can make it. By this, you can prevent any kind of fundamentalism, whether I don't know what they are called. I don't care what their name is. They are a threat to us, to all the humanity. And for that, we need a international space where we can offer our solution. We are very rational. We can be also very pragmatic. And we consider also the interests of each state who is involved in the region. And since India is not so much involved in the conflicts we have, and also some other states, I think I'm not asking India for support because of their trouble with Pakistan and Turkey. No, accept this. And by the way, I mean,
but that should make it easier to support.
No, I mean, democratic transition in Turkey would also be for benefit of India, of course. Yeah. De-escalating the mindset of Turkey, which we are trying to do, is also that Turkey's foreign policy would change. Recognition of the Kurds becoming part of Turkey, which means that what we would do in the government or in the politics of Turkey is, of course, preventing aggression in foreign policy. Yeah. And, of course, not allowing using proxies like the fundamentalists. So that will be also for benefit of India and for Saudi Arabia, for all.
Yeah, definitely.
Look what they are doing in Bangladesh is the same thing, not just Pakistan. Erdogan has his hand everywhere, in Sudan, in Somalia, all on behalf of Islam, but it has nothing to do with Islam, it's Turkishness.
Yes. They are funding, a lot of funding is coming through Qatar and through Turkey. Earlier it was through Saudi Arabia to all the mosques and madrasas in India. So that is a huge problem for us because it is leading to extremism.
I think we have offered Turkey all the compromises more than Turkey deserves, we gave. And I think the people in Turkey also want to have peace. I think we might there's also right time for regime change in Turkey, really. So Turkey can't continue as such. So they have done everything against us. Every arts of warfare they committed in my country against us. Destroying our villages, destroying our ecology, burning all of our forests, weaponizing our water through the dams they built on our rivers, forbidding our names, permanent condition of state of emergency is Kurdistan in Turkey. What more? Use of chemical arms. What has Turkey achieved with that? Nothing. And the word of Middle East, where Turkey tried to become the ruler of no Ottomanism, gone. Because you have now the Abraham Agreement as a new step in Middle East. You have a new actor, which is Israel in Middle East. Saudi Arabia is coming back to the stage. Iran is going from the stage. Libya gone. Yeah. Shara is now on the stage. There was no Shara. There was Assad last year. A lot of changes. And what has Turkey achieved? So it's the right time to be smart, accept Öcalan's offers, so that we would have peace in Iraq, in Syria, and Turkey, and also in Iran. So we need democratic transition in Turkey so that we can have peace.
No, that is definitely something that we all wish, and I hope that Indian government also proactively starts working on this project. Try to at least host some conferences, host some leaders, and try speaking out on these issues, and speak up for people like your leader Abdullah.
And I would say, can I make addition to Indian demand? So, the US has the flexibility to speak also to non-state actors. So I think India's foreign policy needs a bit more of flexibility. So it's my advice, as a modest advice. So talking also with the Kurds on the ground. Let's say India has embassy in Damascus. I think the bureaucrats can go also to the Kurdish region to speak with the Kurds.
They should. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, they have been already on the international stage in Munich in the 2 days. So all the foreign ministers have been speaking to our people from Rojava. Why not India?
And I don't think we have such great relationship with say Iraq or Syria anyway. So
in Iraq they have relation with the Kurds, but it's narrowed with the economic interests. What I say is cultural exchanges, political exchanges, particularly with Syria, and also, for example, in Turkey we have a party in the parliament. It's an official one. Why not inviting them sometimes?
True.
So it's not, one side you have trouble with Turkey, on the other side you even close the doors for the opponent's opposition.
If it was up to me, I would definitely invite, whoever is the person who is heading Kurdistan National Congress now, the representative to Indian Parliament also to speak on their issues.
Yeah.
So that should be done. And millions of people living in Europe and other countries in diaspora. I mean, our ambassadors in those countries should also meet up with those people.
Yeah.
So that is something that we can do. But let's hope. I think this reaches the right people, this conversation, and I also hope that people in India who watch this understand the issue. At what we are trying to achieve is basically inform the people what is happening. So many people, millions of people are living without statehood, and as before 1947 Indians know what it felt like. Not decades, not centuries of that kind of humiliation, and what you are going through is kind of similar. And I hope that powers that be listen to this and try to work on it. So thank you so much, ma'am. You came and gave us so much time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Best of luck to you.